All right. Good evening, everybody. This is the April Fool's edition of On the Sports Lines, but I got April Fooled over this weekend. This is my new chair that I'm sitting in. Very comfortable. Handlebar on one side, no handlebar on the other side. Thank you, company that made this thing. It's very comfortable, but if my hand is, not really in the same position as this one, you'll completely understand. Oh, yeah, and I'm Stephen Rabinowitz.
And I'm Jay Kaplan.
And I'm Anthony Strait, and I have no armrest. I'm sitting on my nice, comfy bed right now.
I'm on my couch, so again, on the middle cushion, so again, no armrest. Rabbi, what's the real name of tonight's edition again?
It is the opening day Final Four / April Fool's edition of On the Sports Lines. Just add everything into the same thing. So this is a very serious time of the season in sports. We're going to talk the 2021 season with 100 more games and the same stupid doubleheader rules, along with asking the age-old question, is it really March Madness when the Final Four is in April?
Yes.
We'll do all of that in a second, but first let's bring back the NFL as our opener because the NFL never leaves the news cycle. Okay, after years of teasing, that's not an exaggeration, the NFL has finally given us what its owners have already wanted for pretty much decades, a 17-game season. One less preseason game, one extra regular season game. The NFL now moves their calendar back, so Super Bowl 56 is now February 13th. Enjoy that date weekend, couples. Yeah, no, that's not President's Day weekend. Sorry, Jay, you don't get February 14th off.
Right, that's right. It's April 14th, the 14th of February. Ooh, Valentine's Day.
Like I said, I'm going to have to schedule my dates on February 21st or February 20th and 19th. Anyway, with all of that being said, the NFLPA actually agreed to this, and Jay, oh yeah, the players went to celebrate on Twitter, like Saints running back Alvin Kamara to celebrate the decision by calling it dumb as hell. Pop the champagne, everybody. Anthony, why now for this?
Well, here's the thing. As much as Alvin Kamara and a lot of players are not happy about it, there's nothing they can do about it. They literally agreed to this, to the collective bargaining agreement a year ago when it was putting together everything for the 2020 season as far as pandemic protocols and COVID. This was one of the things that was a part of that CBA that was passed barely by a player vote. The player vote was 1,019 to 959. So it's not like the players overwhelmingly hated this thing, but it's a case of the have and have nots. Like the lesser players, obviously, they look at it as getting an extra paycheck at the expense of not having to slog through a fourth preseason game in most cases. But look, the players had to know that the owners was going to do this. I mean, you think about the 2020 season, there were no fans for the most part. We all watched the Super Wild Card weekend, and three of those games, there were no fans whatsoever. So it was kind of weird in itself. But that is kind of the drawback, is that the league lost revenue. They just closed off a big TV deal just a week and a half ago. So this allows them to add that extra 17 game when it's going to be more money. I'm assuming the players are going to get a bigger cut. I think it was 47% initially. Now it'll probably be up to 48, close to a little
48 and a half, I believe, is the number from what I had heard from reading.
Yeah, so the thing is, though, it's a catch-22 because 3 days. Number one, the NFL can never talk about player safety ever again when you just realize you just dump the extra game onto the league and you're not even giving them an extra bye week. So it's like, okay, 17 games and literally the same 1 week. That's number one. Number two, there are it's going to be odd number games. So obviously, some teams are going to play an extra home game. Some teams are going to play an extra road game. How does that play out come the postseason push? As well as
to be fair with that, they're going to switch that interconference every single year.
Yeah,
NFC will do it 1 year, AFC will do it the other. So they know what they're doing with that.
Yeah, it's going to be an alternate thing also. But here's the number 3 day. And this is a postal day for me. And I was just talking to Rabbi about this. I lose two of my favorite jokes because of this. No more Jeff Fisher 8-8 jokes. And for the war of me, even the Dallas Cowboys can't finish 8-8 anymore. unless they get a tie and finish 8-1. Which at this point wouldn't even surprise me because Jerry Jones we're talking about. But yeah, I'm kind of on the fence about it. Like, I love more football, and I love the fact that the TV deal allows for a lot more flexibility as far as marquee matchups. But the 17 game is kind of a catch-22 because, like I said, for a league that's trying to promote player safety and all these protocols as far as concussion rates and everything, like basically everything you think about safety, to kind of dump an extra game on, it kind of undermines that. But the players should have known that. Like, and that's why I say that the Players Association in the NFL is probably the weakest union of any sport, because they seem to really negotiate things, not thinking about the long-term ramifications of this. Like, did they not know the owners was going to eventually go to a 17 game and there was nothing they could do about it?
All right, guys, buckle up, because here comes the rant. I am not a fan of this on so many levels and for so many reasons, the least of which is that an uneven, unbalanced schedule offends my sense of order in the universe. The possibility of an 8-9 team making the playoffs, let alone potentially winning a division, hello, NFC, irks me to no end. Not to mention teams not being able to finish at 500. You can call it mediocrity, but there is something to be said for not having a losing season, even if it's not actually a winning season. Ask a player, a coach, a GM, a fan. They'll tell you finishing at 500 is better than finishing below 500. And I'm sorry, removing one preseason game does not equal adding one regular season game. The season is so going to start at the same time, and now it'll end 1 week later and cause the Rabbi agita with his wife. And I agree with Anthony, any comment by the owners or Commissioner Goodell about player safety, which I never bought before, now completely go out the window. The only reason to add a regular season game is money. Money for the owners' pockets, money for the broadcast partners with whom the NFL just signed a brand new and epic rights deal to televise and stream the games. The records that are going to fall with a 17-game season are going to annoy the purists who've only known a 16-game season, which has been in place for over 40 years. But for those who remember a 14-game season, there were purists who railed against all the records that would fall with 2 extra regular season games. Now, with this scenario, will 5,000 passing yards become the new 4,000?
It already is. It doesn't matter if you add an extra game.
Hold up. 5,000 is still not the norm. 4,000 is now the norm. What I'm saying is, hey, will a receiver now top 2,000 yards? Will we get more 100 catch seasons? Will 150 be in the reckoning? Gotta believe so. Will Derrick Henry now be able to get 2,500 yards rushing? Will 50 passing TD seasons happen more often? The answer to all of these questions is probably, and get ready, because I guarantee you that come the next CBA in 10 years, an 18-game season will be on the table, because the owners will likely say that an uneven number of games really doesn't make sense. And hey, the CFL has had an 18-game regular season forever. And if it takes cutting yet another preseason game, they'll do it and say, hey, we had a pretty good season back in 2020 when we couldn't play preseason games at all. I just hope that by the time we get to that point, the NFLPA demands that in return for yet another regular season game, that Thursday night football, except for week 1 and Thanksgiving, be completely eliminated, and that there are 2 bye weeks. It won't eliminate injuries, but it'll help, and anything that keeps the players on the field is better for the game. The only thing I will give the NFL is that how they're adding the extra game makes sense, alternating years in which each conference gets the extra home game, AFC this year, NFC next year, and so on and so forth, and making that extra game a non-conference matchup where you play the team that finished in the same spot in the standings the previous year as you did. Other than that, I am not in favor at all, because like I said at the top, everything about it depends my sense of order in the universe, Rabbi.
Okay, so first of all, let me unbuckle myself. That rant is over. Number 2, I don't usually go against you guys on purpose, but I'm going to. No, I actually think you guys made valid points, but here's what I think. To Anthony's point on player safety, they've already agreed to the Thursday night football stuff and play games normally on 4 to 5 days rest. We all know that's bull. And I think even the players union knows that's bull. And they still passed a new contract anyway. That's more on Jay's
dumbasses.
To Anthony's point, guess what? not all of the stars are going to be playing in these extra games, which is a true issue of this whole thing, because you're going to see more resting or NFL
you're predicting load management.
I'm predicting some NFL load management. And one of the reasons why the NFLPA agreed to this is the NFLPA is not entirely consistent of big-time quarterbacks and running backs. There are people who are making the league minimum who are going to get a little more playing time. So there's that. Another thing, how do you expect more money to be made? If there's a chance for revenue to be made, especially with the money that this league lost in the pandemic, and I'm not saying boo-hoo, I always say this. I say, if you're going to take away an idea that takes away money or that puts money on the table, think of something else. And I don't like when people are saying, you know what? Let the players have what they want. Give them a 16-game season. I think Jay's right. We're going to get 2 bye weeks. I think they should have done that automatically, thus bringing the schedule to President's Day, which all of America would love. But honestly, it's not a terrible move. I think not having as many preseason games is not a terrible move. I think this is going to be a money-making idea for the NFL. And guess what? Instead of hearing about where Trevor Lawrence is going to go for 4 extra months, I could get some more real-life football. Holy crap, that's amazing. And even though it is a part of the selfish player in me, and yes, there's more chance for injuries, guess what? The injuries are going to happen whether there's a 17th game or not. All right, let's move on to basketball. Again, we are in the end of March Madness. On to the Final Four, where we will examine, not using the air quotes right. Anyway, we're going to have each of the last teams. We're going to do it by Star Watch, coaching style, or Coach Watch, and the X Factor. Let's start by taking our masks off, pretending like COVID doesn't exist, and talk about the matchup that is all where the stars are bright, late at night, deep in the heart of Texas. And we'll start with the Houston Cougars. They haven't been to the Final Four since me and you, Anthony, were born in 1984.
Boys.
Houston took let me finish my words there, Jay. I write these for a reason. Houston took the hard and excruciating road of number 15 Cleveland State, number 10 Rutgers, number 11 Syracuse, and number 12 Oregon State. Oh my God, it's a single-digit team that Houston's going to play in the Final Four. As the American Athletic Conference champions look to win Texas against Baylor in the Final Four and make us think that Houston isn't just all Phi Slamma Jamma. Anthony, let's start with Star Watch.
Star Watch for the Houston Cougars got to be Quentin Grimes, without question. I think about this, the former Kansas recruit went to the Jayhawks, didn't get much playing time, so that didn't work out. Goes to Houston, and now he's pretty much the top guy for the Cougars. He's averaging 18 points a game for the season, 41% shooting, and grabbing 6 rebounds per game. But look at what he's done in the tournament so far. I guess those very teams you mentioned, 18 points against Cleveland State, 22-9, 5-9 for 3-point shooting against Rutgers, against Syracuse, 14 points, 4 rebounds, and against Oregon State, 18 points and 4 assists. Grimes is pretty much the center of the Houston's offense. And obviously going up against Baylor, it's a tall order, and that offense, they're gonna have to get a lot more from Grimes, particularly they're gonna need him to shoot better. He's only shot 5 of 15 in the last 2 games. So they're gonna have to literally get more of an all-around game from him, a little more efficiency from him also. And I'll talk about obviously Baylor's starter watch, which is going to be a key matchup as well. But right now, Quentin Grimes is, if the Houston's going to pull off an upset, and against Baylor, they're going to need a big game from Grimes.
Yeah, and considering he left a program like Kansas to come to Houston, man knows winning, and really shows how transfers are some of the people who are leading the day right now in college basketball. Anthony, let's talk about Kelvin Sampson back to his second Final Four in 19 years.
Who's talking about that, Rabbi?
That would be you, Jay. I'm sorry. That would be you, Jay.
Yes, you are correct, Rabbi. Kelvin Sampson brings Houston back to the Final Four for the first time since the days of Hakeem the Dream, Clyde the Glide, and as you mentioned, the rest of Phi Slamma Jamma. They got there with elite defense, and they're going to need it against a dynamic Baylor offense led by that three-guard monster of Jared Butler, Maceo Teague, and Davion Mitchell. Cougars have been a top 10 team all season. Didn't know it? That's okay. No, most people don't pay attention to the AAC. Their defense allowed the lowest effect. I said most people, Rabbi.
I'm not most people then, apparently, because I have my UConn love from back in the day.
Their defense allowed the lowest effective field goal percentage in the nation at 42.7%. They are number 2 in the nation in offensive rebound percentage, getting 39.5% of their own misses, creating multiple chances at second chance points. They had a 41-29 edge on the boards in their win over Oregon State, including 19-7 on the offensive glass. What they can't do is shoot 32% from the field like they did against the Beavers in the second half, while allowing the Beavers to shoot 56% from the field with only 2 turnovers. They held them to 35% from the floor in the first half. That's 0.607 points per possession and 8 turnovers. A game like that against Baylor, where they shoot like crap and give up too many points and don't force enough turnovers, it's going to send them Cougars home early on Saturday. The teams are similar, meaning Baylor and Houston, in that while they both use their advantage on the offensive glass to generate open looks for threes, which both teams make at a decent clip, but Houston needs to shoot it better than the 35.4% they hit during the regular season. Cougars are a high volume 3-point shooting team, but not a high percentage hitting 3-point shooting team. They put up 32 from beyond the arc against Oregon State, only hit 11. They were 7 of 26 against Syracuse. That's less than 27%. They did hit a little over 36% from 3 against Rutgers, but they only went 8 for 22. And then they went 7 for 25, which is 28% in their opening round over Cleveland State. They've won the rebound battle in every game. They're plus almost 12 per game overall, and they're pulling down 14.5 offensive boards per game. And they're going to need to keep doing that since they've struggled to score in every game since putting 87 on Cleveland State in round 1. They've averaged 64 per game since then, and on nights where the opponent shoots 44% or better from the field, as Rutgers and Oregon State did, the Cougars struggled. Baylor will be the first single-digit seed that Houston has faced in the tournament. Not the opponent you want to be your first single-digit seed opponent when a trip to the national title game is on the line. Sampson's group has their work cut out for them, and it's going to take their best offensive game, along with what they usually bring to the court on defense and the glass, to knock off arguably the nation's second-best team. And
they were a team that wasn't really, I think no expert on ESPN or anywhere who picked them to go to the Final Four, and they were the number 2 seed in their region. They just had so much faith in Illinois, and Houston kind of picked the bones in that situation. They kind of dealt with the madness damage and kind of tiptoed their way to the Final Four, but they've been impressive.
They took advantage of the upsets that played out in their half of the bracket.
They've been impressive, but they've won ugly, but not even the ugliest out of the 4 teams in here, as we'll talk about in just a second. But let's talk about the X factor real quickly. Houston is going to need to muck up this national semifinal as much as they possibly can. This game needs to be in the 50s or 60s to even put the Cougars on the map to win this game. It's all hands on deck to get rebounds. It's all hands on deck to be just a stat sheet stuffer on the board. So I'm going to go with Dijon Giroux.
Yeah.
Giroux is good for 5 rebounds and at least a steal a game. And, oh, yeah, he could also get you double digits in points and kind of be your number 2-3 scorer. He put up a 10-8-8 line in that win over Oregon State, and he averaged a little over 10 points this season. He's the closest thing on this team that you can get to a triple-double. Quentin Grimes will get you your 20 points, but he can kind of do everything in there. And I think that kind of signifies Houston. Houston is a team that needs to be very gritty in this game, and that's what they've done in the AAC all season. They've only lost 3 times, and we're learning now why this is truly a top 10 team, and Dijon Giroux might be the reason why they can beat Baylor. All right, guys, let's move on to the other team who hasn't actually been in the Final Four since, well, most of the world wasn't born, and that's 1950 in the Baylor Bears. The Bears got through Drexel, Wisconsin, Villanova, and Arkansas, kind of a poo-poo platter of the college football world in the Mississippi East. So all of this has found their way to the final part of Indy's Yellow Brick Road. Baylor's been the number 2 ranked team in the nation for most of the season, and it looks like they have finally gotten out of their post-COVID funk to get back to the position where they were to start this abbreviated 2021 campaign. Anthony, let's start with you with Star Watch.
Well, I talked about Quentin Grimes being the star player for Houston. And for Baylor, it's going to be Davion Mitchell. And there's a reason why Jay Baylor said that of the three-headed monster that the Baylor Bears showcase, he's probably the most indispensable. And you see why. You know, he averages close to 14 points a game in his own right. But his defense and his ability to be a playmaker in this offense is why he kind of stands out from obviously Butler and T, who are no slouches themselves. You look at Mitchell's defense, and Demetrius Twice, obviously a big player for Wisconsin, 5 of 17 in that victory. Then you go back to Moses Moody, and he was 2 of 10 from the field, 0 from 4 from 3-point range. Look, Mitchell's ability to make plays, that's number one. In his offense, that's tailor-made to him, but his defense and the fact that every play that he hustles, he's really the engine behind Baylor's defense. He reminds me a little bit of Draymond Green, a guy who can really just kind of do it all. He's a Swiss Army knife kind of player. At 6'2", he can guard virtually anybody. He got the speed to keep up with some of the faster players from the court. He can shoot from outside. You combine him with the other two stars, 41% shooting from the field behind the 3-point arc. Also, he's a one of the 4 finalists for Defensive Player of the Year, the Naismith Defensive Player of the Year. So Mitchell obviously has found his niche on this team, and he is the catalyst really for Baylor's defense up and down that court for the full 40 minutes.
You said Draymond Green, but he has number 45. He's number 45. He has Mitchell on the back of his jersey. Damian Lillard has even tweeted at Donovan Mitchell, "Are you playing for the Baylor Bears in this tournament?" In which Donovan Mitchell tweeted back, "Hey, listen, I have 2 years of eligibility left." So I understand. They're not brothers, but apparently they're both Mitchells and they're both 45. And
yeah,
if you've ever seen them together, they look pretty much alike.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny gag too. I saw the tweet, but Mitchell is more of an all around Swiss Army, like I said, Swiss Army knife player that can do it all, and he's going to be key because obviously you think of Grimes being the offensive catalyst for Houston, and Mitchell's ability to take away the other team's best player, which he has done quite a bit in this year's tournament, it's going to be key because you think about it, Houston can't score, but they have won a lot of their games ugly, and Baylor is a team that we don't know. We haven't seen them really get into a lot of low-scoring games because they're just that good offensively. But if they do get into kind of a muck of a kind of a low-scoring kind of game, it does help that one of your best players on your team is also your best defensive player as well, and you feel comfortable putting them against the other team's superstar on a given night.
Yep.
Jay, let's talk about Scott. Don't call me Bryce Drew, bringing the Baylor Bears back to what could be the peak of their entire college basketball franchise. What is their key in the Final Four to coaching?
I mean, the thing is that here's the thing, Rabbi, is that Scott Drew's team has finally rediscovered their defense, and they're going to need it against Houston. They went from a top 3 defense before their 3-week COVID pause to ranking in the 180s after they came back and were very clearly lacking legs. They'll need it, as one of the Bears' biggest weaknesses is defensive rebounding. They're 273rd in the nation in defensive rebounding percentage this season. And then one of Houston's biggest strengths, as I previously noted, is offensive rebound and scoring off second chance opportunities. Houston's going to try to slow down This Baylor offense, it's number 6 in the nation in scoring at 83 points per game, and is number 2 in the nation in offensive rating at 118.2. They have not really been challenged in their first 4 tournament games, and while their offense is only putting up 74.5 points per game, it's almost 8 less than their regular season average. Their defense is only allowing a little over 60 points per game, and their average margin of victory has been 14 plus points. And even if you remove the 24-point blowout of Hartford in round 1, they've beaten the likes of Wisconsin, Villanova, and Arkansas by an average of 11 points a game. This is a team that knocks down threes at a 41% clip, tops in the nation, led by those 3 guards. Jared Butler's at 40%, Maceo Teague's at 39.6, Davion Mitchell's at 45 flat. This is a team that shares the basketball. They're number 1 in the Big 12 and number 15 in the nation at assists per game, and they don't turn it over that much. Their turnover percentage is 14.1. And Houston doesn't really force that many. Their turnover percentage is only at about 18.9. Baylor will need to pressure Houston into mistakes. Their defense causes turnovers at a rate of 21.6% per 100 possessions. That's number 6 in the nation. And they've got to prevent the Cougars from turning all those offensive rebounds that they get into second chance points. If they can repeat what they did in their Elite 8 win over Villanova, Houston won't stand a chance. Baylor went into the half down 7 after shooting only 2 of 12 from downtown, as Villanova very much dictated play on both sides of the ball, crowding Baylor shooters into that bad 3-point shooting and using their bigger body guards to drive and play in the post. In the second half, the Bears tweaked their offense and got after it on defense. Their pressure turning Villanova over 5 times in a 3-minute, 10-second span, which was 1 fewer than the Wildcats had in each of their first 2 NCAA tournament games combined, en route to 16 total turnovers for the game, totally taking the Wildcats out of their offense. A 7-point deficit turned into an 11-point win when it was all said and done. The defensive effort was no surprise. Drew has gotten them to do that all year. But how he adjusted his offense is what really turned things around. He told the nation's number 1 3-point percentage team in the nation to stop shooting threes. They scored 28 of their 39 second half points in the paint. They only took 7 shots from beyond the arc in the second half. The fact that Baylor was able to get a win against a quality tournament team like Villanova by going completely against their offensive DNA is proof that this team is a legit title contender with a coach who knows the game. Speaking of DNA, it's in Scott Drew's. His father is the legendary Homer Drew, and he got his players to buy into all of this. The Bears may be a number 1 seed and arguably the second best team in the country, but this team has an underdog mentality. They're players who believe they are either better than their station or felt like they weren't properly valued as recruits, and they have played for a coach who has fought his entire career to be judged fairly and taken seriously. What Scott Drew has accomplished at Baylor is nothing short of spectacular. Google Patrick Dennehy to understand what he inherited when he came to Waco. Now he's only 1 win away from the national championship.
And Google Dave Bliss and to people who have completely screwed up an organization. By the way, that was their Sweet 16 victory against Villanova. The Elite 8 game against Arkansas was actually a very fun game where they actually kind of played the same offensive style. And that's where I saw Baylor probably play their most deadly, because anytime they needed a shot, they got it. But I appreciate you saying teams need to actually go more for the 2, like Scott Drew, because I feel like that's a lost art right now in college basketball.
I mean, if you think about it, Rabbi, there's so many of the teams in this tournament that are so reliant on the 3. Do you think any other coach would have taken the chance and basically all right, we've done this all year, stop doing it, go drive to the hole?
Because they're entitled. Sometimes they kind of like to entitle their players and be like, it's like the NBA, you'll get out of your funk. No, you won't. No, you will not. All right. My X factor for Baylor has been the consistency of this team starting every game in 2020, 2021. And I'm going to talk about Mark Vital. He only had 4 points in that Elite 8 victory versus Arkansas, but his points just seemed to come at the right time. There was a nice little putback dunk he had as part of Baylor's 10-1 run that basically took out Arkansas in the second half. But this guy is a board machine. In March, he didn't do anything less than 4 boards minimum. And since the turn of this tournament time, 7 to 9 boards in every single game. And in Baylor's 2 Big 12 tournament games, he went double digits, 10 against Kansas State, 15 against Oklahoma State. Vital is a vital part of the Baylor Bears. I know, give me a little clap over there. He's a 4-year player, and his presence out there helps a ton in many different ways. He can stay out there for 25 to 30 minutes a game. Just played 18 in the last one, though, because he got into foul trouble very, very quickly. Just stay out of foul trouble, big man. And I think Baylor has a very good chance to be making the championship game against possibly a team that they could have played in the regular season back in late
Rabbi,
2020.
that dunk you mentioned, to me, that was one of the more hilarious sequences of that game, because Grant Hill is like going nuts about the dunk, like before he's even finished with his, his review of that play. Vital's getting called for his 5th foul down at the other end.
I swear to, we talked about it. It's been such a trope of this entire tournament. Yep. People getting 2 fouls in less than 30 seconds to a minute. And it's happened at least more times than I can count. Yep. All right, let's move on to the other side of the bracket. And let's talk about a matchup that takes us to a place that most of us don't usually see, the West Coast. Let us analyze and let me think if I said it right, heavy favorites in this tournament is the undefeated 30-0 Gonzaga.
You were one heavy
Bulldogs.
short.
Okay, sorry about that. They're back, but they're actually only back to the Final Four for the 2nd time in school history. But the way they play, this seems like a birthright for Washington's favorite Suns. The Bulldogs pulverized Norfolk State, and I got the first round opponent right. I said Drexel instead of Hartford last time. Oklahoma, Creighton, and USC to get here to Indianapolis, although we've been in Indianapolis the entire time. There are 1 billion stars on this team, and Anthony, we want you to pick just one.
We got to talk about the forward, Drew Timme, without question. He was a semifinalist for the Naismith Player of the Year. Obviously, didn't make the cut, but he was in our final 10. Also, I will talk about the mustache that has gotten as much recognition as his play has of late. And yes, despite what his mom thinks, it's actually been a good day for Gonzaga. Yes, the mustache. It's a fan favorite. Look, he's a relentless scorer. He's improved for the 3-point shooting. His defense has been rock solid too. He scored, when you think about this, he scored 23 and 5 against Mobley and USC. I mean, he does come up in the big games. His last 3 games, this is in the tournament, 30 against Oklahoma, 22 against Creighton, and 23 against USC. He is just a ball full of energy. You saw at the opening of the USC game, like he's up and down the court. He's getting to the foul line. He's making things happen. He's chest bumping the head coach prior to the game. He is just one of those charismatic guys whose play goes along with it. And Drew, like I said, like Drew Timme, his play down the paint has been a key factor to Gonzaga's explosive offense. They can shoot from outside, but you have that he gives them that inside-outside balance on offense that makes the Bulldogs just so hard to defend. And it should be interesting to see how UCLA defend against him, because if he's getting on to a good start like he did against USC, where he scored practically 14 points and seemed like a matter of minutes, it's going to be a tough night for the Bruins team. That it's going to be a huge, heavy underdog going into this matchup.
Okay, so here is where I would possibly give you like analysis or counterpoint of what Anthony just said, but I want to make you know the facts here on this show. Drew Timme's mom has now supported the mustache. If you saw his Sweet 16,
by default, by the way, it's only by default.
It is by default, but still, she was wearing custom earrings of Timme for that Sweet 16 matchup, mustache included. So she has embraced the mustache, number one. Number two, if anybody has watched the terrific studio shows that CBS and TBS have done this March Madness, Clark Kellogg has decided to wear a Timme beard in honor of Timme, and it's just phenomenal. It's fun to see a lot of people have fun with a player who deserves the accolades that he gets. Him and Kispert are really two players who are going to go down as all-time legends in college because they really exemplify the work ethic of the college game.
Amen to that.
All right, Mark Few.
Mhm.
He's been here a time or two, Jay. What is his coaching strategy going into this Final Four?
Rabbi, Mark Few's strategy is pretty simple, and it's the same one he's employed all season and into the NCAAs. Run out the best starting lineup in the nation and let them do what they've done every game. Run every opponent out of the gym. The Zags have averaged a little 88 points per game while holding opponents to a little over 64. That is a plus 24 average margin of victory. The record for a 6-game tournament is plus 21.5. Even removing their round one 98-55 rout of Norfolk State, they have still averaged 85 points a game and held Oklahoma, Creighton, and USC to an average of 67.3, beating them by an average of 17.7 a game. Anthony already laid out what Drew Timme and his mustache have done in this tournament. He's been about as dominant as a player I've seen in a long time. I mean, when a guy his size is doing Euro steps to score layups, opposing bigs just have no chance. But the rest of this team has also balled out. Rabbi, you mentioned Corey Kispert. He went for 18 points and 8 rebounds. Jalen Suggs put up an 18.10 rebound, 8 assist line. That's 69 of Gonzaga's 85 points by their 3 best players. And they won despite shooting only 33%, 7 of 21 from beyond the arc, and only going 12 of 17 from the line. That's a shade under 71%. USC is similar to the UCLA team Gonzaga will play in the Final Four in several key areas, but stronger in most of them. For example, the Trojans had held opposing offense to an even slower pace than the Bruins have this year, but Gonzaga put up a 72 possession game against them. USC had held opponents to the lowest 2-point field goal percentage in the nation. Gonzaga shot 26 of 45. That's 57.8% from inside the arc. The Trojans, with freshman sensation Evan Mobley, were 12th in the nation in offensive rebounding. Gonzaga grabbed nearly 80% of USC's missed shots, allowing USC just 8 offensive rebounds. 2021 debunked the often used narrative, who's Gonzaga really beaten, as the Zags beat Kansas, West Virginia, Iowa, and Virginia earlier in the season and did so convincingly. But with wins over Oklahoma, Creighton, and USC in the NCAAs, Gonzaga has beat up on quite different top 40, top 25, and top 10 opponents over the last 3 games, and seemingly with ease. To think that UCLA can confound the Zags into shooting as badly inside the arc as they did from outside of it, and get them to turn the ball over to the extent they did against Creighton 16 times, and get them to stop playing defense is a scenario most of us don't see happening. The Zags led the nation in making their twos at 63.7%. So even if they're having an off day from beyond the arc, they can still beat you from inside of it. This is a team that's number 1 in the nation in offensive efficiency at 122.2 and 15th in the nation in defensive efficiency at 91.3. That net rating of plus 30.9 is best in the nation. UCLA definitely doesn't have enough firepower on offense to trade baskets with the Zags, especially one of the things Gonzaga does best is limit threes. Teams take just 33.9% of their shots from beyond the arc against them, which limits their variance and allows Gonzaga's considerable talent to take advantage and take over. I've been saying this all season. I've been saying it in our last 2 shows. This is the best and most complete team in the nation, and I'll be shocked if anyone derails them, though I give Baylor the best shot.
It's funny how just 21 years ago, and I mean, we all remember, we were hearing quotes like the slipper still fits for Gonzaga as they made the run to the Elite Eight. And now, as we've talked several times, I think all 3 of us this week, this is running out like the best college basketball team of almost possibly our lifetime, single season, which is shocking. If you had told me 20 years ago that Gonzaga would be the top team in the nation and be the team with probably the best chance to break this Indiana 1976 undefeated streak. It's been one of the timeless records that has stood for such a long time. And I think we all feel like it's about to be broken. So guys, there's only been 1 triple-double in the history of Gonzaga basketball. You know who has it?
Part of me wants to say Adam Morrison, but I have a hard time believing it.
Oh, you would not. It's the guy who I'm about to talk about, Joel Ayayi.
Of course, that makes sense.
Yes, he's not one of the big three on this team. And until we got to the regional final against USC, he scored over his season average of 11 points in all of his postseason games, conference tournament, and obviously the first 3 postseason games going into this. The good thing is, as Jay just mentioned, they run pretty much a starting 5 that'll be on the court for 30 minutes. Andrew Nebhard is the other guy in this rotation. They run 3 guard a ton of the time. But this team, with Ayahi being in this lineup, he brings the familiarity out of there. He'll average 28 minutes a game. He will always get you 7 to 9 rebounds. It's pretty much a guarantee. As long as he stays out of foul trouble, book it. 7 to 9 rebounds. He just plays tough, and he is kind of waiting in the wings to be the next real star in Gonzaga. He's only a sophomore. So when, obviously, Suggs is going to leave this year, and you would imagine Kispert and Timmy might too. So he is going to be a part of team history, and he's going to be a part of the future of Gonzaga. And in this Final Four, as long as that starting 5 remains together and all plays well on the court, I know we're jinxing them, but we just don't see anybody.
You're jinxing them. It's all on you.
Listen, for somebody who's lost 3 out of his Final 4 twice now, I have to say, though, Gonzaga is just stacked on all sides of the court. I've said it before, and I will say it again. I will be shocked, and honestly, I said the word appalled if UCLA beats them on Saturday. However, since they are the 4th team in the Final 4, let's talk about them. And let's talk about the only real team in the LA area, Jay, UCLA. Sorry. After they set offense back, I think 125 years.
To the time even before John Wooden was running.
It's way before John Wooden. We're almost going back to the Naismith days. They set it back really bad. They're winning in the regional final with a whopping 51 points over Michigan. Let's talk about the second team to go first forward to Final Four in the 10 years of the format. They look to giant kill Gonzaga and hopes to leave Gonzaga just another victim like the other teams that fell the Bruins' way. Michigan State, BYU, Abilene Christian, and Alabama, and then, of course, Michigan. Anthony, let's talk about Star Watch for the Bruins.
Yeah, I tell you what, UCLA kind of took a page out of the 1985 Villanova Wildcats playbook and literally just made that game extremely hard to watch. But if you look up the term walking bucket in the dictionary, Johnny Juzang's picture is probably somewhere in that dictionary. Look, he's a walking bucket without question. Think about this. In Pac-12, in 4 Pac-12 games, he scored 27, 25, 32, and 25. That's literally more than all 28 games he played at Kentucky before transferring, which was 82 points combined. In the tournament, and he scored 28 points against Michigan. He was UCLA's offense, without question. He literally scored half of their points and knocking Michigan out of the tournament. He scored 28 points. He has 108 total through 5 games. He has been the offense. He has been the scoring. He's done everything, and he's done everything on a bad ankle. So that's just been anything short of remarkable. But they're gonna need they're gonna have to score some more points. I mean, I don't know if they can get Gonzaga into that ugly, low-scoring, tunnel-and-field game that they got the Wolverines into, which, by the way, was missing one of their key starters anyway. That didn't help. But for a team that is in the 300s as far as offensive tempo, they've got to figure out a way to score more points. I mean, Juzang is going. If he can score 50 points, he probably would. But they're going to have to figure out a way to get him some more scoring help. If he's going to take the bulk of the scoring on one ankle, I don't know. I don't like the chances if that's going to happen. But they're going to have to, like I said, they're going to have to find a way to get more offense outside of this one guy being able to score virtually every point down on every possession.
Have you ever seen a team depend on an ankle more than UCLA? He's broken this ankle sprained this ankle 3 times in March, which is amazing. And you even saw in the 2 minutes he wasn't on the court versus Michigan. They basically, as a tweet from Zach Osterman wrote, put enough tape on his ankle to land him a spot in another edition of the Mummy. So Michigan just, you need him on the court at all times. All right.
And look, right now, if UCLA could borrow LeBron James' walking boot to make sure that James on the court.
Forget about LeBron James. They should have stole Isaiah Livers. I mean, they had a chance.
Yeah, if they can get that walking boot to make sure that he's good to go for the Final Four and possibly a national championship game, they'll do it. I mean, they need this guy to score. They need to be healthy. I don't think they can't get both at this point. No. So they're just gonna invite him until he eventually can't walk.
They're gonna need some exploratory Dr. James Andrews surgery to actually get them this far. All right. This is a very interesting way for Mick Cronin to make his Final Four debut, but he's here now. Let's talk about his coaching style.
Well, Rabbi, when Mick Cronin came on board at UCLA, he promised he'd teach his players how to win and he'd make them tough. Mission accomplished on both parts. UCLA, as we have discussed, is by far not the most talented team, but they know how to muck up a game and make it a messy rock fight. Think about UCLA's road to this David versus Goliath matchup with Gonzaga. They finished 4th in the Pac-12. Entered the NCAAs on a 4-game losing streak. Then they had to win a first 4 game to even be part of the full 64-team bracket, and they had to come from 13 down against Michigan State to do so. Think about this. Cronin lost 5-star signee Dacian Nix to the G League before the season even tipped off. He lost Chris Smith, his team's second leading scorer, to an ACL tear in January. And then forward Jalen Hill left for personal reasons in midwinter and hasn't been seen or heard from since. People wondered if Cronin was the right guy for this job. He didn't care. He brought his Cincinnati scheme to Westwood, slowing down the tempo and cranking up the defense and getting the Bruins to buy in on winning games his way. Lo and behold, it worked. And the program with the most titles in college basketball history made the Final Four in a very un-UCLA fashion. John Wooden would not recognize this team, guys. In their 5 tournament games, UCLA has averaged 63.2 possessions per 40 minutes, and even slower pace than their regular season tempo. Anthony, that rank is actually 338th in the nation, according to Ken Palm. More importantly, UCLA hasn't hit double digits in turnovers or lost the turnover battle in any of their tournament games, giving them a consistent edge of about 5 possessions per game. They will need that against Gonzaga. And in order to even have a shot at beating the best team in college basketball, the Bruins are going to have to stick to Cronin's formula. As Anthony said, Johnny Juzang is going to have to score in bunches. He's averaging 21.6 per game over the Bruins' 5 tournament games, topping 20 in a game 3 times, including 28 in the Bruins' upset of number 1 seed Michigan. And the Bruins are going to have to be physical and grind out possessions on defense in order to try and keep this game close like they did against Michigan, holding the Wolverines to 0.895 points per possession. Being the type of team that hangs around long enough for the opponent to shoot themselves in the foot, it's not the worst scheme, especially in a one-and-done scenario like the NCAA's. Here's the potential pitfall. No one expects Gonzaga to have its worst offensive outing like Michigan did. Seems inconceivable that the best offense in the nation will go the final 5 minutes of the second half of a game without making a shot.
Yeah, and I feel like that game could have gone on another 20 minutes for Michigan, and honestly for UCLA, and nobody would make a jump shot in any way, shape, or form. That game was, by the way, second time we've used the word muck, by the way, in these Final Four segments. That's
what they do. They muck about.
That's nothing to really be happy about. But so guys, I want you to don't worry about a thing, because Tiger Campbell is gonna be all right for the UCLA Bruins. All Bob Marley jokes aside.
Come on, Anthony. Tell me that when you look at Tiger Campbell, you don't see Bob Marley.
Absolutely.
Come on.
If you watch the Michigan game, not only did he score 11 in that game, by the way, Juzek and Campbell, 39. Rest of the team, 12. But if you saw the Michigan game, you know this man has no fear. He stared down that Michigan bench late in that game, or in the end of the first half, essentially like he owed them money, probably because Campbell bet the over on this game, and obviously that didn't actually work out too well. I don't know how I get to pick an all-team first team conference player as my pick, but when you're literally the only other guy on the team, I guess you become an X factor. Again, only him and Jusang are the only players on this team that went for more than 4 points. Only 5 players scored the entire game for Michigan. So I think this would be a sufficient
UCLA.
answer that we're looking. I mean, for UCLA, sorry, but I think this would be a sufficient answer to answer that question, don't you? We can see
Rabbi, the only other option you had for X Factor, Rabbi, was the rest of the entire team.
And that's exactly what I'm about to say, because the whole damn team outside of Campbell and Jusang needs to step this up, because let's face it, you ain't winning this game in the 60s. You're winning this game in the 70s bare minimum, and you might have to go to 80 because, again, Gonzaga is one of the best offensive teams we've ever seen in this tournament.
Yeah.
But you also got to go with Tiger, because not only does he have his ability to score at crunch time, he has the ability to get a steal at exactly the right time. And we've seen it in the 5 games that they've played in this tournament. If he does it again, maybe the Goliath of Gonzaga will get slayed by the David of UCLA. John Wooden must have been rolling over his grave in that statement.
My team, an underdog? What is this you say?
Yes,
I do not understand the words that are coming out of your mouth.
No, ain't nobody understand the words that are coming out of this team, out of my mouth when it comes to this. But
hey, Bill Walton does Conference of Champions, right?
Bill Walton must be a pain shit right now.
Him. UCLA is in the Final Four. That man has probably been, had a eating grin on his face. And he's not going to come off anytime soon.
And the fact that, again, the Pac-12 got 3 out of the Elite 8 in the season. And in fact, the last few years, the Pac-12 has just been dashed beyond belief. I think that definitely is a sense of self-worth for a guy who calls the Pac-12.
He's got to be loving this, Rabbi. I mean, his alma mater, the Pac-12 team most unlikely to reach the Final Four, has reached the Final Four. That man's got to be in freaking Bruin heaven.
Yeah, I can just picture Bill Walton making coyote noises and beating his chest. Bill Walton's a character. Let's just be honest. Like, if there's a reason to stay up late to watch Pac-12 games on ESPN, it's because he's more like a calling the game, and who knows what the heck he's talking about.
If you ever don't like the product on the court, you can always listen to Dave Pash and Bill Walton to give you some insight made that Pac-12 After Dark. All right, guys, let's clap with me. Yep. Let's take center field on tonight's show and talk about opening day in Major League Baseball.
Rabbi, don't we have one last piece of basketball business?
Oh, yeah, that's right. We'll get back to the clapping in just a second. But earlier today, UNC head coach Roy Williams called it a career in a kind of a shocking move, Jay.
Yeah.
Why and what's next?
The answer to both of those questions is who the hell knows? I mean, when you texted me this morning to tell me that Roy was retiring, my first reaction, not surprisingly, was, what the fuck? I was shocked and surprised. I texted my brother, and he was also. No one was a better successor to the legacy built by Dean Smith than Roy Williams. When Coach Smith retired, all of Tar Heel Nation wanted Roy to leave Kansas and come back to Chapel Hill. He just wasn't ready yet. When he finally changed his hue of blue, everyone was ecstatic. The Heels had gone through some rough times after Coach Smith retired, but Roy quickly restored UNC to its blue blood status and kept them there for most of his time, stalking the sidelines, hallways, and locker rooms of the Dean Smith Center. He never considered himself the same caliber of coach as Smith, but with more wins and national titles than his mentor, there's no denying Roy's accomplishments at UNC. 485 and 163. That's a 748 winning percentage. 16 trips to the NCAAs in 18 seasons. 29 straight opening round wins before this year. 5 trips to the Final Four, 05, 08, 09, 16, and 17. 3 national championships, 05, 09, and 017. Again, the last one being against Gonzaga. He's the only coach to win 400 games with 2 schools. He was 418 and 101. That's an 805 winning percentage with 4 Final Fours in 91, 93, 02, and 03, making the title game in 91 and 03 with Kansas. His 9 Final Fours are the 4th most by a head coach. His 903 wins are 3rd all time. I think Coach K had the best quote about Roy, and here it is. College basketball is losing one of its greatest coaches and a man who genuinely cares about the game of basketball and, more importantly, the people who play it. While we were on opposite sides of college basketball's greatest rivalry, we understood how lucky we were to be a part of it. I will miss competing against him. His legacy is secure as one of the greatest coaches in basketball history. Amen. Roy, enjoy your retirement, but we are going to miss you.
Anthony, any comments?
Yeah, Jay just said it all. You think about this. He's 70. He has battled some health issues in recent years. So in a way, it's kind of not a surprise. I think the fact that it happened now is more of the surprise than later down the road. You feel like maybe Roy Williams had maybe a couple of good years left on. But let's think about this. North Carolina, along with Duke, was two basketball blue bloods that really had a tough season. COVID had a lot to do with it as well. So maybe this is the time for Roy Williams to step away, obviously, but the impact that he left behind, and obviously over 900 wins in the national championships, it's definitely gonna be there without question. But unless you know that some of these coaches that have been around for a long time, like the Coach K's and of the world, we're starting to see them kind of, come down to the tail end of historic Hall of Fame careers. And Roy Williams, like I said, stepping away. I remember him from his years in Kansas and being a coach all those times. When I first started watching college basketball. And obviously, you think about, he helped recruit Michael Jordan in North Carolina. He had Paul Pierce when he was at Kansas. He's had some good players. He's had some good players that he's even helped recruit, or even coached him into himself. And you think about over 33 years as a head coach, close to 50 years as a coach altogether. I mean, Roy Williams is one of those lifetime coaches that I think you felt like he would just basically continue coaching until, his deathbed. And maybe this is the time for him to step away, just realize that maybe this is the time he wanted to spend the rest of his, kind of live the twilight years of his life, with more of his family, stepping away from basketball. Obviously, we know coaching can be a stressful job more often than not, and also the college aspect of recruiting part of it as well. So, like I said, that was just a surprise to anyone, but Roy Williams, a hell of a legacy he's leaving behind.
We won't get to anything of what's next because we have to move on with the show, but I will finish this with one quote from Michael Jordan said today. Roy Williams' great success at the court is truly matched by the impact he had on the lives of the players he coached, including me. I'm proud of the way he carried on the tradition of Coach Smith's program, always putting his players first. I'll always think of, and I think everyone will always think of North Carolina as the program that was Dean Smith's, but Roy Williams did a damn good job keeping the legacy of UNC basketball alive. I'm interested to see what's next.
He did it all without cussing.
No, he did not. That's a damn good job. That's a darn good job that he did.
Dadgummit, Roy done good.
Dadgummit, Roy done good. All right. Now, since we've already done it, everybody, it's time to take center field on this show and talk about Major League Baseball and opening day. The New York Yankees will go first in our look at the locals. They started their season with an unfamiliar opening day L. It's only their fourth loss in the last 16 Yankee Stadium opening days. But the campaign begins the same way the last damn 10 of them have begun, looking for number 28. Now, with opening day out of the way, I think I just saw another Yankees K 3 hours after the game ended. I don't know how that's possible. Let's focus on the other 161. The fourth year for Aaron Boone will be critical, as the Yankees, they're betting favorites to win the AL, and a lot of people think that this is the season for them to live up to their potential. Let's take a look at lineup, rotation, and bullpen. So, Jay, the lineup is stacked, but the lineup can also be in the ER 50% of the time.
Yeah, I mean, Rabbi, you pretty much know that the key to this lineup being productive, as productive as we're used to seeing, is simply being healthy. And for me, that starts with right fielder Aaron Judge. We know what Judge is capable of when he's able to play close to a full season, which has not happened since his epic rookie year season of 2017, where he suited up for 155 games, mashed 52 homers, drove in 114 runs, scored a league-leading 128 times, walked a league-leading 127 times, put up a slash line of 284, 422, 627. His next 2 seasons, he averaged only 107 games, which is why his numbers fell to an average of 27 homers, 61 RBIs, 76 runs scored with a slash line of 276, 387, and 534. This is a guy whose 162 game averages are Cooperstown level. 45 homers, 102 RBI, 120 runs scored, 109 walks, and a slash line of 272, 390, 558. So keeping him healthy and a fixture in the number 2 slot in the batting order behind DJ LeMahieu, the hit machine in the leadoff spot, is key. Obviously, other guys need to stay healthy, like Giancarlo Stanton, who has also only played 1 full season since coming to the Bronx. In 2018, he put up 38 homers, 100 RBIs, scored 102 times, and had a 266, 343, 509 slash line. Played only 72 games in 2019 and only 23 of the 60 last season, though his slash line from 2020 is in the ballpark of what we'd like to see from him in a full 162, 250, 387, 500. He also gave us a glimpse of what he can do when he is 100% healthy with his 2020 playoff performance. In 7 games across the wild card and division series, he hit 308, 6 homers, and 13 RBI with an OPS over 1.4. The Yankees are starting this season already in next man up mode. First baseman Luke Voit, who has crushed it since donning the pinstripes, is on the injured list with a torn meniscus that will likely keep him out until sometime in May. This forces Aaron Boone to have veteran Jay Bruce, who the Yankees signed to a minor league deal, start the season at first base. The other questions that need to be answered this season: will Aaron Hicks finally get his power all the way back now that he's theoretically far enough removed from his UCL surgery? Will Gary Sanchez hit consistently enough to warrant getting most of the playing time at catcher? Got off to a good start today, going yard with a man aboard. How much does Bruce have left in his bat? Will Clint Frazier finally realize his potential now that he'll be penciled into the lineup as the starting left fielder every day? The great thing about the projected 2021 starting lineup, and as in years prior, no single player shoulders the bulk of the run production load. We all know hitters go through highs and lows throughout a full 162-game season like we're projected to have this year. If the lineup is not decimated by injuries, which has happened better than average to a better than average extent in the past, the hope is that the slumps are staggered while the rest of the lineup is raking. This lineup has done the next man up thing better than just about any team in baseball, but they'd love to not have to do it this year beyond the current situation with Voit. They don't have to. They're going to destroy anyone and everyone who stands 60 feet 6 inches from their batter's box and put a lot of runs up on the scoreboard, Rabbi.
So it's kind of funny. I will never, ever do this again, but I was actually listening in the car to John Sterling today when Jay Bruce was up. I'll tell you in a second. And they were talking about how Jay Bruce and Mike Tauchman were fighting for a position on the roster. And they asked, so who are they going to send down when Voit comes back? And he said the answer's simple: somebody else will get hurt by then, which has seemed to be the Yankees' motto for the last few years. So It truly is a next man up. And I think almost all teams, especially in this day and age, have to prepare for next man up. And no one has done it better than the New York Yankees. It's just eventually the house of cards will fall. And hopefully this is not the year for that.
Need a better foundation this year, Rabbi. Can't be cards.
We're almost
like a little more cement and rebar.
The House of Bricks is never actually said as the term, but that's a reason for that. Okay, so if you are the Yankees, you have to kind of like the rotation this year better than you have in previous years. I know Garrett Cole is always susceptible to the long ball like he was today, and that's why 2-1 became 2-2 very quickly, and he's going to do that at Yankee Stadium. But I'm going to be an optimist, first time ever, and mention the fact that he only gave up 2 runs in 5 to 6 innings. And guess what? In this day and age, if you're playing a game at Yankee Stadium, you give up 2 runs in 5 to 6 innings, you should win about 3 out of 4 times, no? Yes. But let's talk about Corey Kluber. He's going to have some nerves coming back. He only started 1 game for Texas last year and really wasn't up to his form that he was in Cleveland, but he's going to be fine. I think once he gets back up to that velocity or somewhere around that, he is going to start the game on Saturday. But for me, he's not a number 2 starter just yet. I don't expect a 2.44 ERA like he had in 14. I don't expect 2.25 like he had in 17. I don't expect 2.89 like he had in 18. But if you're looking for a serviceable number 3 or 4 guy, guess what? Kluber's perfectly it. Then you have Jordan Montgomery. He's reliable. He had a Yankees hide-saving Game 4 performance last year that went from, oh no, it's Jordan Montgomery to, oh, it's Jordan Montgomery. And if you have the drudges in the schedule like Kansas City, Cleveland, and Seattle, guess what? I trust Montgomery to do some damage against those teams. Then you have Jameson Taillon. Same thing as Kluber. His numbers are damn good from 2018. 14-10, 3.2 ERA. He is a project. He is only made 82 starts in his entire career. Has a 3.67 ERA. He's a low end what I expect from Kluber. If he gets his stuff together, great. He is a perfect number 3 or number 4 starter, and he could even get up to a high number 2. However, there's one guy who doesn't have injuries towards him, and guess what? I truly think he is going to be a number 2 starter, and that's Domingo Germán. Are we going to see the guy who went 18-4 in 2019 before basically having all of his domestic problems and getting suspended by MLB? Are we going to see the guy that basically had a meltdown on Twitter? I don't think we will. Despite all of the issues about his locker room demeanor that came out in spring training and a lot of graphic details of why we didn't actually see him in 2020, he's been pitching lights out in spring training. And again, it's obviously spring training, but he's still 28. He still has the best years of his career ahead of him. And guess what? He made this rotation and he's going to start early in this season. And I think he's going to start Sunday. And so I expect the best out of Domingo Germán. And I really think he could truly be that number 2 guy. And once Luis Severino gets back, then you could really fit him in. This team just has to kind of hold water in that rotation until Severino gets back and until this team really gets back to full health. I don't think they're the AL beaters that a lot of people say they are. I think there's a lot of teams on that same level. Let's see what happens with the Yankees rotation in 2021.
You call that optimistic, Rabbi? You don't seem to be too high on the Klubot and Jameson there.
It's not the fact that it's not too optimistic. It's what I expect of them right now. If you've had an injury for over a year and haven't really pitched in a competitive game for over a year, do you expect a number 2 starter? No, I didn't say I expect him to be not a major league competent starter. I expect him to be exactly what J.A. Happ was, which was a perfectly serviceable regular season pitcher.
I got to draw the line if you're going to compare J.A. Happ to a former Cy Young winner.
Regular season, though. Regular season.
No,
I want
sorry.
that.
I got to take issue with that. Corey Kluber, even at his most mediocre, I will take him over J.A. Happ every day of the week and twice on Sunday. The guy's a Cy Young Award winner. I think he will eventually get back. And here's the one X factor when it comes to Jameson Taillon that I brought up on the spring training show, and maybe not enough people are talking about. This guy came up through the Pirate system with Garrett Cole, and having that guy in the same locker room with him is not something we should take for granted, even if all it does is get his mental game back up. I think that will be a huge help. I think this rotation is going to turn out to be a lot better than you think. But like you, I am anxiously awaiting Severino's return.
I'm actually waiting Severino's return too. And it's, again, I need to see a regular season game out of one of those before my optimism can go sky high. Like I said before to you.
We'll revisit this conversation in May.
Oh, we will definitely revisit this conversation in May, but there's a bullpen to get to. And even though Aroldis Chapman will be back on Sunday. Yes, we still have a few more games. What do we expect out of this bullpen in 2021, Anthony?
Well, here's the thing about the Yankees bullpen. For years, they've been the strength of the Yankees as far as success and just getting to the postseason and win division titles. And the win above replacement, which is the WAR, they've in the last decade they have placed no worse than maybe since 2014. They've been in the top 10 and wins above replacement, and they were number 1 the last 3 years, 2017 and 2019. Last year, however, they were 20th in the league, which means that the bullpen, while still getting the job done, not exactly as lights out as that have been in years past. And you look at it like this, the opening day we saw today, obviously Chapman is the closer, but he's still serving his suspension from the dust up he had with Tampa Bay last season. So he'll be back this weekend. Also, you got Chad Green, O'Day, Justin Wilson, who's on the IR as well. Cesar Luciaga, who took them out today. Nelson and Nick Nelson among those. But here's the thing: Chapman's 33 years old. He's a year older. He's been kind of fooling around with a split finger, and the talk has been that his fastball isn't exactly blowing guys away like it has been in years past. Now you're throwing the injury to Zach Britton, and now you have a bullpen that, while still good, has some depth issues. And you wonder if this bullpen that's been so good for the Yankees for so many years, if it becomes an Achilles heel. We saw it opening day against Toronto. Garrett Cole went with 5 innings, I think, 5 and a third. He did do a lot of pitches. He did go deep into his start, and that's where the Yankees are exposed. And the bullpen has to take up a huge chunk of innings, even in games with Garrett Cole starts. So the Yankees bullpen, while it's been good the last few years, it's going to have to be a lot better than it was in 2020, because obviously you have the full 162 game schedule to deal with. It's not a sprint anymore. And don't be surprised if, in the next few months, the Yankees are looking for bullpen help, because right now they're still decent, but it's depth, and until Zach Britton gets back, who I guess will be the setup guy to get to Chapman, the Yankees are going to have to mix and match to get come out of the bullpen just to try to eat up some outs, eat up some innings to get to Aroldis Chapman, and that's what the Yankees bullpen is going to be for the first time in a very long time. Not the surest thing in the Bronx.
Jay, Yankee fan to Yankee fan here, though. I love Darren O'Day already. I think Darren O'Day is such a good addition to this team. I see him being a 7th or 6th inning guy right away.
Yeah, and here's the thing: is that, like, Anthony, you say Chapman's lost a little bit off his fastball. To me, that means he's down to like 97 as opposed to 101. I think the split finger will be interesting to see if he can pull that off. Yeah, until Zach Britton gets back, they might be treading water a little bit, but that is where you're hoping, the starting pitchers can get maybe a couple of extra more outs, and they're going to have to use that depth. Maybe, guys like Michael King and Clark Schmidt and Debbie Garcia giving them some outs and innings out of the bullpen. You're right, Anthony. They will have to mix and match until everybody's healthy. But when everybody is healthy, I think they're going to be exactly what they used to be.
And Nick Nelson didn't do too bad today, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, you see, if they go into the season, obviously with a healthy Zach Britton, the Yankees are a top 5 bullpen without question. But because of the injuries, and obviously Justin Wilson not available as well, they do have the depth issues. And until they can get those guys back, they're going to have to really kind of put things together to get some outs and hope that their starters can maybe get to 6 or 7 innings to try to shorten the game up a little bit. Because normally you use the bull, and obviously you're a Yankee fan, so you've seen this for many years. You use the bullpen to kind of shorten the game up for the starters. The Yankees may need the starters to shorten the game up for the bullpen and maybe go on extra 1 or 2 innings.
Here's what it comes down to. I'd rather not have these. If I have a choice, I'd rather not have them in April and have them in October. That's all I'm saying.
I think Anthony's just so pessimistic about a bullpen because he's used to the Mets bullpen, which we'll get to in just a second, that he's taking every little hole that the Yankees have and saying, it's the biggest issue on this team. Come on now.
But here's the thing, though. The Yankees' worst bullpen help is better than the Mets bullpen in a long shot. Obviously, I'll get to that in a minute. But the Yankees are still good. It's just going to be for the first couple of months. Obviously, with the injuries, it's piecing together enough outs to get through games. And with the Yankees lineup, they really shouldn't have a problem with run support. So it's like the Yankees run down a bullpen like the Mets bullpen, for that matter.
I will say this, though. Their worst bullpen performance today was pretty damn good, and it only took Nick Nelson got 3 strikeouts in his 10th inning. He just unfortunately gave up one measly hit. I really played that game more on the lineup not being able to produce today more than the bullpen, either starting or relief.
Yeah, and I blame the worst rule of 2020 making its way back into 2021, which is the extra inning guy on second, which is, I think, it's the most ridiculous thing in the world. Why did they bring it back? It's beyond me. But you know what? The Yankees bullpen did get the job done today. I still say that rule is ridiculous.
Agreed.
Yeah, like I said, it's gonna be like an adventure, but the Yankees bullpen is a little better. Like I said, it's fine. It's not gonna be as dominant because they don't have the full staff, but they're gonna have to, like I said, to play jigsaw puzzle for a time being.
Before we go on to the Mets, Anthony, say thank you to Uncle Steve for getting that Francisco 10-year, $341 million contract done at the 11th hour last night.
Yes, literally
sir.
at the 11th hour, like 11:30 last night. I get the notification that he signed the extension. So yes, he is a Met for the foreseeable future for a very long time. Here's the thing:
38 years old.
Yeah, and here's the thing: when his contract expires, the Mets will still be paying Bobby Bonilla. So
wow,
yes. 4 years away from the Bobby Bonilla being away from the Mets. Speaking of, let's get to the Mets with the brash and new Balmer like odor. No one is saying it. I still think Steve Cohen is baseball's version of Steve Ballmer. Seriously. Anyway, Cohen at the New York Mets will unfortunately have to wait till at least Saturday to start their 2021 campaign, thanks to a reported pair of Nationals COVID positive tests. We know of one, there's a second reported. But as well as we all know, guys, you can win the offseason, but what the Metropolitans do in the offseason and on social media has to eventually translate to actual on-the-field work, which is what we'll be talking about right now. Jay, let's talk about the lineup, which actually may be the strong suit of this team.
Maybe. Yeah. And for me, the biggest question about the Mets lineup is what's the best way for it to be put together for this team to be successful. I talked about this a bit in our spring training show when I was talking about Jeff McNeil and where he should play. I said that no matter what glove he's wearing on a given day, the one constant for him should be batting leadoff in front of Francisco Lindor. I stand by that. I've always felt that Brandon Nimmo was more of a number 8 hitter, a guy who gets on base, giving Luis Rojas an obvious sacrifice bunt situation with the pitcher, moving Nimmo into second base and scoring position as the order turns over. This made even more sense to me last season with the universal DH, where Nimmo should have hit ninth and functioned as a secondary leadoff hitter, much as the Yankees did with Brett Gardner in his earlier days, where his ability to get on and steal often put him in scoring position for the top of the order. This would then put Pete Alonso either third or fourth, depending on how you want to pair him with Michael Conforto. And in my humble opinion, no one else should be in either of those two spots but those two guys. Fifth and sixth would be filled by Dom Smith and J.D. Davis, as I think Rojas should put his best offensive lineup out there as often as possible, even with the potential hijinks with the glove that both of those guys bring to the table. James McCann would then slot into the number 7 spot, and then as previously stated, Nimmo would hit 8th in front of the pitcher. In the current era where you put your two best hitters in the number 1 and number 2 spots, having McNeil and Lindor at the top pretty much ensures that Conforto and Alonso will not come up too often with 2 outs and nobody on, which is what you're looking to do. To me, this is the lineup that gives the Mets the most chances to get out in front early in games. And while we know that scoring first doesn't get you the win an overwhelming percentage of the time, with the rotation the Mets can run out there, giving them a lead in the early innings can only help.
Yeah, and when we get to that rotation, we obviously start with Jacob deGrom. We know who that is. He is a Cy Young Award candidate. He is almost always going to be on the top 3 of your Cy Young Award ballot. He could even easily win it any possible year, run support or no run support. There is no doubt that outside of injury, you know what you're getting from deGrom. You're getting 6 to 7 innings every single start. You're really shortening the game for the bullpen, kind of like you said, how the Yankees starters need to shorten the game for the bullpen. The bullpen says, thank you, Mr. deGrom, wipes the sweat off of their brow and takes a seat. However, then you have Marcus Stroman. And I'm surprised he stayed with this team. After all of the little bags and forths that he's had, Stroman, it's been like oil and water. But he had a 3.44 ERA in spring training. He has a ton more velocity to his fastball. And he's added a split-figure changeup. And Marcus Stroman's best stuff is good enough to be a number 2 guy in this rotation. However, in that Francisco Lindor trade, the Cleveland Indians apparently threw in as a little prize in the Cracker Jack box that they got Carlos Carrasco, who has had a very good career. And if you could do pretty much no worse for a number 3 starter. However, he tore his hamstring on Thursday, March 18th. So we're about 2 weeks after that. Initial prognosis was 6 to 8 weeks. They're saying he's made very good progress in the 10 to 14 days since. So the diagnosis right now is week to week. But if you're a Met fan, your best expectation would probably be we'll see Carrasco sometime in May, whether it be the early part of May or the middle part of May. So with that in mind, there was a little contest between Taijuan Walker and David Peterson. And now the answer is both of them. So if they're going to get a good start this year, the 2 guys who were competing for that number 4 are both going to be basically trying to be a number 3. Walker hasn't been a full-time starter since 2017, but in the mid-2010s, you can see him get 9 to 11 wins a year. That's his ceiling, though. And I think he's got enough experience to be the leader in the clubhouse for that spot. Then there's David Peterson. He's 25. Still has a huge upside and went 6-2 last year. What you need to get out of these 2 is 5 to 6 quality starts. And once Carrasco comes back is your number 3. And again, I am very optimistic here that Stroman shows the ace-like stuff that got him the trade out of Toronto to New York. And I think this Mets team can be pretty good with the pitching rotation. It's not just DeGrom, throw a dart and hope you get a good outing out of the next person who it falls on. And of course, you got Noah Syndergaard coming back to the team sometime in midseason. And if he is even 75% of the Thor that we've seen in the past, and he has the same stuff on the mound that he does on social media, I probably think I see a very good rotation coming out there for the New York Mets. And then, Anthony, here comes the bullpen.
Yeah, remember how pessimistic I was for a decent Yankee bullpen? Has there been a bullpen outside? And here's the thing. The Mets bullpen is actually sabotaged in the last few years in terms of making the playoffs. I mean, you think
it literally was the reason why they didn't make the playoffs in 2019.
Yeah, I mean, only the Washington Nationals who figured out a way to patch it together and win a World Series was worse. And last year, Edwin Diaz was actually decent, and the rest of the bullpen was a disaster to go with the back end of a starting rotation that had injuries and opt-outs galore. But look at this, going into this year, the bullpen, just aforementioned Diaz, you got Trevor May, who was the big signing, Aaron Luke, Judge Ramirez, Steven Betances, Miguel Castro, Jacob Barnes, and Robert Gsellman, not mentioning Seth Lugo, who's injured, who's a big loss to the Met bullpen. Betances has not things have not been great outside of Met camp as far as Betances. And then you think of Robert Gsellman who's kind of just like by default, like throwing in the bullpen. He had a 5 ERA, 1.89 WHIP, and the fact that you had Peterson, who probably would have been a nice bullpen addition, now having to be a starter because of the injuries to Carrasco, it hosts a bullpen that already has question marks. And you think about this, Familia has a history of putting runners on base, obviously, from his days as a closer, as we all know, with the Mets. But Tance's philosophy has definitely gone down. So this is a big question mark. Like you see where the Mets have spent all the money in the lineup and in the case of the rotation, but the bullpen has really been the weakness for the last few years. And obviously with Lugo being out and just basically bullpen help, just getting the Diaz, and even Diaz being somewhat of a question mark. He looked good in spring training, but obviously his last start gave up his last appearance gave up 3 runs. The Mets is the opposite of the Yankees. And I actually joked about this with Rabbi. The Yankees bullpen is a strength. The Mets bullpen is kind of a hindrance. Whereas they literally do need the Mets literally do need strong starting pitching and a lot of run support to compensate for a bullpen that is really shaky. And even the closer, like when even the closer doesn't give you much confidence. Look, I went to a lot of Met games in 2019 where Diaz was giving up home runs galore, and the only reason why the Mets won those games because they simply ran out of the opponent simply ran out of outs. That's pretty much how it felt when Diaz took them out. But look, Diaz has the Mets are desperate to have Edwin Diaz get back to the 2018 pitcher that he was in Seattle before coming to the Mets. Because if he can't get back to that, then it's going to be a lot of fingers crossing and flushing anytime him or anyone out of the bullpen take them out. And the one guy that was rock solid for the last couple of years, Seth Lugo, is not available to them at least till May. So the only part of the season, the first 30, 45 games, is going to be pretty interesting for the Met bullpen.
I'm interested to see how Aaron Loup and Trevor May, Loup from Tampa Bay, May from Minnesota, also fit in. They're going to be part of the puzzle. We've just seen a lot of people come to this team and immediately lose everything that they possibly have. Just take a look at Dellin Betances last year, who now basically pitches at a high speed of 89 miles an hour. So this Mets team is very, very flawed in the bullpen. Let's see if they can at least cover it up.
Yeah, to see Betances' philosophy kind of decrease in that one, it reminds me of you remember the show Eastbound and Down on HBO?
Yep.
Yeah, Kenny Powers. You know, you saw he was coming out of a high heat, and just little by little, his philosophy was dropping down to the point where he just couldn't get anybody out. This is the Betances in a nutshell, and it's
almost like Betances left his game on the other side of the Whitestone Bridge.
Yeah, and that's a scary thought for a Met organization that really had him in high regard when they signed him, and the fact that his philosophy's gone backwards, and that was literally the bread and butter of his stuff.
Yeah,
that's not good.
Nope.
Jay wanted to just drop that other line of the Whitestone Bridge and just got it pretty much under the buzzer as we close out this local segment. And now let's move on to the rest of MLB. The only way we know how, division by damn division. Let's start with the rest of the AL East, Jay. Rays won this division a year ago. We'll talk about that in just a second. Yankees and Blue Jays were wild cards. The Red Sox were, for the first time in a long time, irrelevant.
And I know it doesn't seem like it, but the Rabbi, they still actually do play baseball in the city of Baltimore. I just wanted to put that out there.
Oh, I knew I forgot a fifth team in there. Whoops. Sorry about that, Baltimore. I didn't have enough space for you. Sorry.
There you go. Rabbi, I mean, for me, the Yankees are far and away the best team in the AL East. So me picking them to win the division is a pretty easy choice to make. They added depth to their rotation behind Garrett Cole. They have a lineup that can do major damage every day. Major damage. And they should once again have arguably the best bullpen in the American League when they get everyone back. Will they win 100 games for the third time under Aaron Boone? It's possible, especially if that rotation depth lives up to past performance. Can anyone truly challenge them? Sure. Can anyone take the division from them? I'm thinking not so much. All that being said, ever since the offseason concluded, the Rabbi and I have been debating about which team is most likely to challenge the Bronx Bombers for supremacy in the AL East. He still thinks it's the defending AL champion Rays, and I, as I said on our spring training show, think it's the Blue Jays. I think that the losses the Rays had this offseason, starting with Blake Snell and Charlie Morton, will come back to bite them, especially with the additions the Blue Jays made. I also, unlike my esteemed colleagues here, do not believe that playing their home games in either their spring home of Dunedin, Florida, or even in Buffalo will be a problem, though I'm hearing rumors that they might actually be able to go back across the border in July. Either location, especially Dunedin, will bring out Toronto fans. The Raptors have showed that Buffalo has worked as a home, and Dunedin's been the spread.
You mean Tampa?
Sorry, Tampa. My bad. Buffalo. I was thinking somebody else.
Yeah. That was last year for Toronto. That's
right. Buffalo, Tampa. They're vagabonds, but wherever they go, they seem to be do just fine. Dunedin has been the Jays spring home forever, and plenty of Jays fans come out to watch their Grapefruit League games. I like the additions of George Springer and Marcus Semien to the lineup alongside Bo Bichette, Vlad Guerrero Jr., Kevin Biggio, and Lourdes Gurriel Jr. I like the addition of Steven Matz to the rotation alongside their ace. Hyun-Jin Ryu, who pitched a solid game today, Ross Stripling, Tanner Rourke, and the return of Robbie Ray. I like the addition of Tyler Chatwood to the bullpen, which actually just became a bit of a place of need with projected closer Kirby Yates out for the season. However, if Jordan Romano can fill that role, he had a 123 RA, 21 Ks in 14 2/3 innings last season, and in 6 2/3 innings this string, he fanned 15, allowed only 2 earned runs. If he can be competent, or maybe even more than just competent in the closer role, I think the Jays will be just fine. I think this is an 85 to 90 win team, depending on how things shake out. Enough to take the division from the Yankees? No. Enough to be a pesky thorn in their side? Most definitely. And now for the other side of this, Rabbi, go ahead. Defend your.
The only reason I say Tampa Bay is still in there is because you have a ton of core from that team coming back. I mean, but you do, yeah. Obviously, you're not going to think that Lance Archer, Rich Hill, and a lot of this team, obviously, Glassdown. You have Michael Wacha, Colin McHugh. I still think hitting wise, Toronto is still way too young, and even though they got a whole 2 games of postseason experience out there last year, I don't think it's enough to see what Tampa Bay has done. I think they're a really good organization. And again, as I said before with the Mets, Toronto won the offseason. We've seen a lot of teams win the offseason. Hasn't necessarily translated to wins. Remember, George Springer, that prized free agent that you talked about, starting the season on the DL. So there's still a lot to come with this Tampa Bay Rays team. I think it's almost like flipping a coin. Both teams are projected for a over-under of 86, 87, 88 wins. So if one doesn't make it, the other is going to. I think the Red Sox are still at least a year away, and I think Baltimore is still a decade away. So,
and Rabbi, here's the good thing about this season as compared to last. This season, we get back to the marathon instead of the sprint of last season.
Well, not if games get canceled like they already have been. Anyway.
Fair enough.
Pessimistic me is going to move on to Anthony in the AL Central. 3 teams fought like rabid cats for this division last year, and that's in that very, 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 very short sprint. Twins won, but the White Sox and Indians also joined the postseason party. What say you for 21?
Yeah, for me, I think it's going to be the Chicago White Sox. And I was going back and forth between them and the Twins. And I talked about the spring training show we did a few weeks ago, the Cleveland Indians, obviously doing a fire sale and taking a step back. So it's basically now just a 2-team race. I think it's between the White Sox and the Twins. In the offseason, they added Adam Eaton, Liam Hendricks, Carlos Rondon to a lineup, to a core that already has Tim Anderson, that has Jose Abreu, the rating AL MVP. But the biggest addition, obviously, is Tony La Russa, all 76 years old of him, taking over for Ricky Renteria, who was the manager of the year and was fired after they lost in the wild card series to Oakland. So that's going to be interesting. Look, the dynamic of La Russa, who is an old school, no nonsense manager, who has also been outspoken about social issues on the opposite end of, like, obviously questions Cecilia Colin Kaepernick's protest back in 2016, and now you put him into the very fun bunch locker room with a group of young guys who, especially Tim Anderson, for that matter, who is very vocal about social matters and social injustice, particularly Black Lives Matter, as we saw last season. So that dynamic, obviously, the introduction, he talked about it. Try to get it out the way, but it's going to be interesting to watch how that plays out as the season went on. And also the DUI that came out just as he was hired as manager. Look, Jerry Reinsdorf has made no bones about how he regretted not hiring La Russa years ago. So this is kind of his way of trying to make up for past sins, for that matter. But it's gonna come down to what happens on the field. If the White Sox, remember, they led the division with 2 weeks left in the season and went on a 3-9 finish and kind of lost the division to Minnesota and stood up for one of the wild card positions and lost in the first round. But you look at the rotation. They got Dallas Keuchel. Obviously, they added Lynn. Lucas, y'all have to with this last name, Lucas
Giolito.
Giolito.
Yes.
Due to he threw a no-hitter last year as well. So the top half of the rotation is pretty solid. If they can get some support on the back end and the bullpen, I can see the White Sox being a 90-win team that could challenge to probably win the AL Central Division title. It's going to come down between them and Minnesota, but I think they'll be just enough. I think La Russa's experience, as far as being a manager, he hasn't managed since 2011 when the Cardinals won the World Series, obviously. So that long layoff and how his old school coaching and manager style translates to the younger generation, which the White Sox are full of, but they did add some savvy veterans on the offseason. So how that bowl of soup, as I'm going to call it, brought the ingredients meshed together.
Chemistry experiment.
Yeah, it's going to determine whether or not the White Sox can win this division or even contend for the wild card. They're the Powerpuff Girls to the AL Central. You know, there's the sugar, spice, everything nice. Tony La Russa's Chemical X. So pretty much you throw that in. Let's see how this plays out. And Rabbi loves he loves to nod.
I do like the fact that everybody gets their references in, and as the host, I just let everything slide and just move on to my portion.
Anthony, come on. Let's make it simple. Okay, La Russa's that old bottle of Coca-Cola that still has some fizz. The rest of that team is a freaking jumbo-sized package of Mentos. Okay,
I like the Powerpuff Girls thing better. Okay, let's move on to the AL West.
That says a few things about you, Rabbi.
It does say a few things about me. So we're going to ignore the Texas Rangers and Seattle Mariners. First of all, two quick things about those two teams. Number one, Texas Rangers, huge rebuilding process. Did you know Chris Young, former pitcher, is now their general manager?
Yes.
What the hell? I did not realize that in doing this research. And I hope the 1 million fans who are maskless, who are packing Globe Life Field this year, enjoy the games, because it's going to be a long rebuilding process for Texas.
Man, did they ever get on the president's bad side today with that nonsense?
They might have 65 wins, but at least they'll have a full stadium. Seattle is definitely a year away. They have a lot of good building blocks on this team. Kyle Lewis, Jared Klenick, and believe it or not, James Paxton is back on this team. But I still think Seattle doesn't compare to the top three of this league. All right. Let's talk about the Oakland A's. They won this division last year. They filled holes on this roster, but did it late. They have Elvis Andrews now, as they actually traded in division to become the new shortstop. You have Trevor Rosenthal as their new closer. Jed Lowry, yes, that Jed Lowry is going to be second base for them in 2021. And you have Matt Chapman. The Oakland A's have always overachieved. I think they don't overachieve this year. They look like a solid third place team to me. And unlike our production meeting, I'm flipping the script on you because I went back and forth on this even after our production meeting. I had the Houston Astros at number 2. I think George Springer leaving for Toronto, as Jay just mentioned, leaves a huge void because the Astros, at least until the postseason last year, couldn't score runs. They have Michael Brantley. They did manage to retain him. You have a good 1-2 punch in that rotation with Zach Greinke and Jake Odorizzi. But let's face it, this is not the Garrett Cole and Justin Verlander combination that you've had in the past. The Astros, it's going to be a weaker division, but I do think that they probably, them and the Rays are probably going to be your wild card matchup. However, God willing for baseball, I have the Los Angeles Angels winning this division. They are very popular to contend this year. They didn't do a lot in the offseason, but I think time helps this team out a lot. Joe Madden, proven winner, is a guy who led the Cubs to their first World Series in so many years back in 2016. You have another year, obviously, of the best baseball player on the planet, Mike Trout. You have Anthony Rendon having a full season in this lineup. You have, most importantly, although you do have Griffin Canning in the start of the rotation, but you have probably the biggest secret weapon in all of baseball. And as he's healthy, I think he has a very good season. That's Shohei Ohtani. Considering the fact that this is a double threat who we haven't seen in baseball for a long time, the Angels have gotten pretty much 2 years to get him right And I think to get him right, gets this team right. And honestly, I think the Angels are ready to be a 90 to 95 win team and to be the class of the AL West and get Mike Trout back to the playoffs for the first time in
nice.
7 years. It would be nice for baseball. It would be nice for all of us. So we'll see what happens. As I think the AL is very interesting. I don't think there's a clear favorite. I know the Yankees are the betting favorite. I think this is going to be a potluck, and I think what we're going to see is a lot of 90 to 95 win teams. If anybody crosses that 95 win threshold, I'll be surprised.
Hey, Rabbi, you talk about the Angels, and I got to say, they are to me one of the most interesting and intriguing teams in the American League.
High ceiling. And
I'll tell you this. I mean, everybody talks about Trout and Shohei Ohtani doing it with the glove, with his arm and with his bat. It's going to be interesting to see how his plate appearances and starts break down. But here's the other thing, and to keep this in mind, we are coming to the close of one of the greatest hitters in all of baseball, and he's on pace to potentially hit some milestones this year. So give Albert Pujols some love. I think I
will give Albert Pujols some love. It's going to be interesting how they work him in, because this is about, again, now I'll be really negative, about 25% off of the peak of what Albert Pujols used to be. If he could get you 20 home runs this year, Lord willing, that would be a very huge accomplishment for the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, of Disneyland, of many, many different corporate sponsorships.
Hey, he's about to join a very exclusive club, players with 3,300 hits and 600 homers. So
you're not going to see that history pretty much. There's not a lot of current players who are actually on that route right now.
That's right.
All right, let's continue this marathon and talk about the NL East. And Anthony, you'll start us off. The Braves won it again in 2020, but the Marlins actually woke up, showed us that they were a real team, and made the playoffs. Plus, you had the last team to win a World Series when there was a 162 game season in this division. Toughest division in baseball, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I still feel like the Atlanta Braves, and it hurts me as a Met fan to say this, because growing up, you watch the Atlanta Braves win the division over and over.
Hated them.
Yeah, pretty much. But the Atlanta Braves are still the class of this division. They kept one of the most potent offenses together when they re-signed Marcell Ozuna to a 4-year contract. Obviously, you got the reigning NL MVP, and Freddie Freeman's still in that lineup. Ronald Acuna Jr. As well. Ozzie Albies as well. That lineup is still going to be able to put runs up at a breakneck pace. Only second to our Dodger team. They led 3-1 in the NLCS before losing 7 games. But then they started the rotation, and Max Fried, they added Charlie Moore and Ian Anderson. Obviously, great pitchers and make that rotation solid. But when they get Mike Sikora back, who was having a great season until he tore his Achilles last year, they get him back, and automatically that starting rotation gets a lot better. I look at the National League East, top to bottom, that division is going to spend a lot of time beating each other up, because you think about how good the Braves are, the Mets, obviously, the Phillies, and then you think about the Marlins as well as being 4 teams that can really just take turns beating the crap out of each other. And it's been that way the last couple of years, but I think Atlanta still is the team in this division. I think the Mets, I think they get one of the 2 wild cards in this division. But look out, like I said, this division, I can't see anyone winning more than 95 games coming out of the NL East, if 90 games, because like I said, when you play a lot of divisions, a lot of teams, a lot of games within the division, and the division this tough, you're going to you're just going to be beating the hell out of one another all season long. So it's going to be a matter about who just sticks around long enough. I think the Atlanta Braves, when you look at their lineup, you got the solid rotation, and the fact that they still have a solid bullpen, I think they're the team to beat and still in this division. But the Mets is not too far off. I think the Phillies are going to be really good, and you can't, like I said, you can't sleep on the Marlins. The Marlins were the team that came from the COVID situation. Remember, they were the ground zero team as far as baseball COVID was concerned, and still managed to make the playoffs. So it'd be interesting. This is going to be one of the fun divisions to see. We already saw the Phillies and Atlanta Braves kind of beating up on one another earlier today to open up the season. So expect that for the next several months.
Max Scherzer, Patrick Corbin, Steven Strasburg, with probably Juan Soto, one of the most dangerous hitters in the lineup. Victor Robles is on the Washington Nationals. Kyle Schwarber can hit home runs. Adam Eaton. Don't sleep on the Nationals. It's all 5 teams in this division. Washington is loaded up again, and I think they don't sleep on them. I wouldn't be surprised if they got the wild card out of this division. This is top to bottom a tough division.
Yeah, you know what,
guys? Let's not gloss over the fact that the Miami Marlins made history this offseason, signing longtime Yankee and Dodger assistant GM Kim Ng to be the first woman to run a baseball front office. The fact that she gets to work for Derek Jeter may have helped a bit, but there is no doubt that she is deserving of this role, and I hope she excels at it, and it continues to open the door for more women to kind of get into these upper levels of baseball.
Absolutely, Jay. Well said. Let's go to the NL Central, which Jay had already declared over when Nolan Arenado signed with the Cardinals. I'm here to tell you that there's actually a division. The Pittsburgh Pirates, okay, it's over for them. Their over under is
when's the last time it ever got started for them, Rabbi? It
got started for them a couple of years ago when they actually had talent in their system like Garrett Cole, but their over under is 58.5, and the next over under is Cincinnati at 81.5. I'm
taking the under on Pittsburgh.
You can make the under 40 for me, and I can possibly still take the under. The Reds have a very good rotation, but losing Trevor Bauer is going to be tough. They have a lot of veterans like Joey Votto, Nick Castellanos, Mike Moustakas. But again, the loss of Bauer is tough. I don't think Sonny Gray is going to keep that rotation afloat. Plus, this is also a very tough division. There's not a lot of W's in this division. I think the Cincinnati Reds are about a 500 team. The Cubs, I don't know what they're doing. I don't know if they're ready to rebuild or if they're ready to contend. Javier Baez is still on this team. Chris Bryant is literally on the trade market every single day. They lost Yu Darvish. They lost Kyle Schwarber. They lost John Lester. Anthony Rizzo was in a walk year. Obviously, we talked about Baez in a walk year. Jock Peterson is in the outfield. The Cubs may be a seller. I can't pick them to win this division, which leads me to 2 teams. I love the Cardinals. Obviously, Nolan Arenado. The Cardinals were involved in probably the biggest heist of the offseason when they basically didn't give up any top prospects and got money back to get Nolan Arenado on their team. However, there's still a lot of questions in that rotation. Jack Flaherty had a little step back last year, but he's still the ace. However, Carlos Martinez, Miles Mikolas, and Kwang Hyun Kim are all sidelined, and the Cardinals have Adam Wainwright. And if you're older than me and Anthony, I don't know if we have a lot of hope for you in a rotation. Adam Wainwright is 39 and was seen giving Carlos Beltran a strike 3 in 2006 when I was just out of college. So I don't necessarily.
Why you got to do that to Anthony? Why you got to do that
Anthony.
to him?
Sorry, Anthony. Anthony, you have Francisco Lindor. You can take that to that now. But you have a lot of veterans on this team. They re-signed Yadier Molina. You obviously still have Paul Goldschmidt. You have a promising season for St. Louis, but I don't think it's the stone cold lead pipe lock that Jay says it is. Milwaukee.
Not just me.
Yes. It's not in lead pipe lock, though, because Milwaukee, who came back and won against Minnesota today, has a lot of good talent on there. Lorenzo Cain was a COVID opt-out last year. He's back. He's going to bring some power to this lineup. You have Jackie Bradley Jr., who the Brewers got for cheap. You have Colton Wong, who has postseason experience, who the Brewers got for cheap. Brandon Woodruff has acted like an ace in the last few years. You have Josh Hader and Devin Williams. That is probably the NL's best bullpen in Milwaukee. And of course, you have probably the most feared hitter, if not in the non-Dodger division of the National League, possibly the entire National League, in Christian Yelich. He only went 205 last year with a 111 OPS plus. But if he can get back to himself in 2021 and get to an MVP-like caliber level, boom. I think Milwaukee and St. Louis fight it out until the final day. I don't think either of these teams are a 90-win team. They're about on the 88-87 win level. And I think they're a step below the big, I will say, four in the NL, meaning the Braves, the Mets, and two teams that we'll talk about in a second, Jay. But this is going to be a very good fight. Milwaukee has now been a stalwart in baseball. They really have become a playoff consistent team, kind of like what St. Louis has been. And I think both of these teams really are going to fight it out this year. All right. Last division, NL West. Jay, best for last. The Dodgers are the reigning World Series champion. But good Lord, the Padres are coming along after just being a playoff team for the first time in years a year ago.
Talk about winning the offseason. This division is going to come down to those 19 head-to-head matchups between the defending World Series champion Dodgers and their neighbors to the south, the much improved San Diego Padres. Look, guys, at the end of the day, and with all due respect, the Giants, Diamondbacks, and Rockies are just cannon fodder for the other two. Though, with this likely to be the last year pitchers are hitting, I really hope Madison Bumgarner gets to go yard at least once. I think it's going to be the Dodgers, but I think the Padres are now good enough to take them to at least the final week of the season in the race for this division. The Dodgers have an abundance of pitching depth, which you'll need for the full 162 games we hope to play this season. Clayton Kershaw, Walker Buehler, Trevor Bauer, Julio Urias are pretty much locks as the first four starters, with Dustin May, Tony Gonsolin, and former Cy Young Award winner David Price back from his 2020 COVID opt-out. Whichever of them ends up in the bullpen for stretches only adds depth to a crew that has a seemingly return to form closer in Kenley Jansen, with Blake Trinan and his nasty stuff setting him up. Then you add in Victor Gonzalez, who may be one of the best lefty relievers in the game, along with Corey Nebel, Jimmy Nelson, and Dennis Santana. And the Dodgers' pen may be just as good as their rotation. The lineup, well, it's every bit as lethal as any in the game, led by right fielder Mookie Betts, shortstop Corey Seager, center fielder Cody Bellinger, and third baseman and COVID protocol violator Justin Turner. Welcome back.
Who loves making those prank phone calls to people when you least expect it, by the way.
Perfect guy to talk about on April Fool's Day. Even the losses of Enrique Hernandez at second base and Jock Peterson in the outfield will not derail the Dodgers. Super prospect Gavin Lux now gets his full shot at taking over at second base, and Edwin Rios, another farm system product, will be looked at to replace Peterson's lefty power bat. We've discussed and debated ad nauseum what the Padres did this offseason in an attempt to catch and possibly overtake the guys from Chavez Ravine. So I'm going to keep it brief. Yu Darvish and former Cy Young winner Blake Snell, along with Joe Musgrave, improved the starting rotation, a must when chasing the Dodgers. And they ensured that shortstop Fernando Tatis Jr. will be a lineup mainstay, whether he's playing alongside Manny Machado and Eric Hosmer or guys who have yet to call Petco Park home. Has A.J. Preller done enough to take the NL West from the Dodgers this season? I'm not ready to go there just yet, but the future does look bright for the Padres. However, the present still belongs to LA.
Yeah, I love this rivalry, by the way, that's coming in. It's the rivalry that we didn't ask for, but we're definitely getting. I think that this is
definitely glad we're getting.
I'm glad we're getting it, and I think these are just the top two teams in the NL West. These could be the top two teams in all of baseball. I think it's kind of sad that they're both in the same division because, again, you could see a 97-win team and a 95-win team from the same division. And because we're back to the old playoff format, that 95-win team is going to have a one-game playoff to get in to the playoffs, to then play the 97-win team again in a 7-game series. Sometimes MLB is just not fair.
Right. Yeah, it does every year. When you look at the National League, you look at the East, and obviously the tough division there. You look at the West, with the Padres and Dodgers, like, well, there's ever a year where baseball should have went to an expanded playoff format, this should have been the year. But I mean, like I said, it's just it's gonna just turn back the clock. You're gonna see some really interesting pennant races down the stretch.
Yeah, what's going to be interesting, guys, is based on how this year shakes out, and if you're right, that the Padres are coming in as the wild card, and if they're that means that they're playing the Mets for a 1-game play-in, and if the Padres lose, there's going to be screaming long and loud for Major League Baseball to go back to some type of modified version of the last of 2020's playoff system, because they don't want to see a one and done anymore. And I will say this, the only part of the expanded playoffs that I agreed with is the fact that the wild card was not a one and done.
Yeah, and I think we've all agreed the wild card should go to best of 3 and do it.
Oh, without question.
All right.
Yeah.
So after 2 hours of intense back and forth, or at least an hour on baseball, we're going to do some predictions again. Because 1, 2, 3 strikes, I'm out. It's time to do it one last time. So
you're gonna go down looking, my friend.
Oh, I'm gonna go down
off your shoulder.
You mean I'm gonna go down like Carlos Beltran in 2006?
Pretty much.
Really?
You gotta do it to him again?
Yeah. You set it up. You set it up. Okay. So.
All right, Anthony, you still have Francisco Lindor, and he signed an extension. You can
yes,
smile.
congratulations. Do you still have Francisco Lindor?
Okay.
He signed a $321 million extension. You're fine.
There you go.
Okay. So, who will be overshadowed by the NFL? I mean, playing for that sweet, sweet World Series trophy and winning it in October. Who wants to go first, Jay?
Yeah, I'll go first. Coming out of the AL, this is where I'm going. Is there ever any doubt? For all the reasons we've already discussed, I don't think any other team in the American League is as complete on paper, at least as of now, as the Bronx Bombers. This may be their best shot at ending their World Series drought and finally concluding the chase for number 28. National League, Dodgers. Look, we all know how tough it is to go back to back, but to me, they're still the best team in the National League for all the reasons I just noted. And although the Padres and the Braves are going to make it a little bit tougher for them to repeat as NL champs, I still think they come out of it. And as someone who grew up on the history of the game and the Yankee-Dodger World Series rivalry, I have wanted to see this rivalry play out at the biggest stage of Major League Baseball again for the longest time. I think it's good for baseball, and I'm hoping we get it again. And I'm going to hope that this is the year that the Yankees finally bring the trophy back to the house that Jeter built.
All right, for me, National League, you know what? It's the Dodgers. I mean, and like what Jay said, you got several teams that's going to make it very difficult. They're not going to just cakewalk their way to a National League pennant. Not when you have pretty much the entire National League East, along with the Padres in their own backyard to have to deal with. And also, you got the dark horses that come out and like the Cards and the Brewers. But I still think the Dodgers are still the most complete team, top to bottom. The American League, wow. I mean, it's going to be a lot of 90-win teams. There's going to be a lot of teams that's like 90, 93 wins. That's not going to get in the playoffs. But I'm going to go with the Houston Astros. I think they showed the last few years you literally cannot sleep on them. Even much as we want to bury them for the sign stealing and all this other stuff, this team was 3 games down in the ALCS and were 1 game away from being only the second team to come back from a 3-0 deficit. We all know who the team who blew a 3-0 lead, the 04 Yankees. I'm sorry, Rabbi. I had to.
That's okay. That's okay.
A little bit, Ben. But yeah, I'm picking the Astros and the Dodgers. A rematch of 2017. I think the Dodgers go back to back. I'm gonna go on a limb here. I'm gonna say Mookie Betts, World Series MVP.
All right.
That's not even much of a limb, but
no, it's not much of a limb. It's pretty sturdy of a limb.
Yeah. Okay, so Chalkies, it's time for me to shake things up a little bit. When the Titanic hit the iceberg, we jumped off of the lifeboat. We didn't just sink with it. We found a way to get to the lifeboat, and some people survived. So this is how I'm going to do this thing. AL, you know what? I like the Yankees a lot. I like what they're doing, but sometimes I feel like there's always that one hurdle that they have to get through. And again, as I said before last year when I picked the Astros, who were only one game away from making the World Series, again, with the losing record, there is going to be a time when the Yankees will go over that hump. But until I see that hump being gone over, I can't pick them. I can't pick anybody else in that division. The Rays are weakened, and I think the Blue Jays are too young. I can't pick anybody in the AL Central. They're all going to beat up on each other. I am picking somebody in the AL West. However, I'm picking the Angels. Wow. Yeah, I'm picking the Angels because we haven't seen Mike Trout in this big game before, and I feel like you see him in the playoffs and he can go all Barry Bonds in 2002 on you. I trust Joe Madden in the playoffs. This team is a year better, and this team can prepare for that moment. That's why I flipped the Angels and Astros pick late, because I think the Angels are going to win the AL. I was originally going to go with the two of you with the Dodgers, but then I look back in history, and I kind of think back to the Super Bowl this year. Nobody repeats. Kansas City didn't repeat. They lost their final obstacle. San Francisco didn't repeat. They did everything in non-consecutive years. Kansas City was the closest in 14 and 15, lose World Series, win World Series, but they were a wild card in 14. Indians didn't do it. Cubs didn't do it. Guess what? I don't think the Dodgers are going to do it. I'm going to pick the Padres. I'm going to pick the Padres because I feel like that rotation is so solid that I think this year Blake Snell will actually get to pitch past the sixth inning in the playoffs. And Jace Tingler is going to realize that he is not Kevin Cash. I have the Padres winning the World Series because all that money, you can win the offseason, but they also really built a foundation with that team. And I think, if not now, when for the Padres, this is the time. So even if they don't win the NL West, I truly trust them in a 7-game series to go.
A Pacific Coast Highway World Series. Nice.
Yes.
Yeah,
that would be the first time since the A's and the Giants in '89.
Yep.
Yeah, you know what? That would be the headline of Mike Trout against Fernando Tatis Jr.
Yeah,
I think would really sell for Major League Baseball.
Yes.
That would be an interesting series, though. Like, you think about this. The Angels play in one of the most unique stadiums, and the Padres literally has a warehouse in left field that Mike Trout can aim for every time he bats.
It's going to be a very fun MLB season. Let's hope we get through it.
Amen.
Through a consistent 162. We might get 156 or 157. I thought 162 was always too much anyway. So, okay, Sarah.
Yeah.
Right. Guys, I'm done talking. I'm almost about to lose my voice, and I need to find another arm for this chair. So that does it for another On the Sports Lines. We have many ways to watch this show. You want to watch live? Facebook.com/On the Sports Lines. On demand? YouTube.com/On the Sports Lines. Via that little Twitter bird thing that is in the blue box with white lettering. What is that, Shane?
We do at ONTH Sports Lines, where the link to this show will come up sometime tomorrow.
Happy Easter, everybody. Enjoy a very busy sports weekend. Play ball. See you next week. For Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, my name is Stephen Rabinowitz. Peace. Good night.
Happy birthday.
Good night, everyone.